Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Behind the Page. I'm CJ, and today I'm joined by an extremely talented and special guest. You know of him as a comic book artist for DC Comics, Mad Cave Studios, and more. Welcome to the show, Travis Mercer. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Of course, of course. So, I usually start by asking my guests about their comic book origin story, what got them into the medium,
Mhm.
or in this case, doing art. But I have something else that I want to ask first here. If you couldn't
Okay.
tell by the poster behind me, I'm a huge Flash fan. So,
Yeah.
you designed one of the coolest Flash villains ever in Parallax Reverse Flash that
Oh,
I
yeah.
had to ask what that's about just because it's such a cool design and just such a cool idea for a villain, too.
Yeah, that's a funny story to start out with too. So I got that job as a round robin situation a couple years ago. DC was doing this thing where if you were a newer talent, there was just so many characters that they wanted to do, but so little space to put them in books. So they were doing this competition, kind of like March Madness, um, where they put a couple of creators together and put them on a project, and people could vote to see who's got into the next level, so to speak. I was with a writer named Brandon, and he came up with this Kid Flash story, where Kid Flash was pulled out of our world into the Speed Force and transferred into another planet where uh, Thawne, the Reverse Flash, had acquired a Reverse Flash ring. And the story, I mean, that was just the elevator pitch, and I was like, oh yes, this is absolutely. Unfortunately, we didn't go all the way to the end. It was actually Superboy, Man of Tomorrow,
Mhm.
that actually got the full run. That was the
Mm.
that was the prize, is you got like a full 12 issue uh run. But that our story and the pages that I did draw for it ended up being in the backup of
That's
that
how I
story.
felt, saw it.
So
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, so it was kind of bittersweet. I'd still like to return to it at some point, just because it was so much fun and that costume was really fun to design. I'm pretty proud of it.
Hmm.
Even though it doesn't get much attention, it's still pinned on like my Instagram here. So like it's, yeah, it's one of my tops. I really love that splash page too. I worked, pretty hard on it.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it. I like that you enjoyed it. That makes me happy.
Of course, of course. It kills me that there's not more of just that story out there. Like
Yeah,
I would it just is such like a cool like final boss for any Flash
yeah.
character, like Parallax Reverse Flash. You just can't come up with anything
No.
cooler than that, I
Uh,
feel like.
one day, I like to hold on to hope that it's the story is just teased. It will get a full arc one day. At least that's what I'm hoping.
I hope so. Everyone who's listening to this, tag DC and say that you want to see this story, please.
Yeah,
And it drawn by
absolutely,
Travis.
absolutely.
But
Sure.
transitioning more, how long have you been reading and interested in comics?
Oh, I mean, I've I've been reading comics since I don't really know the exact date. They've always just been there. I had an older brother who happened to have a couple of graphic novels, and I just remember them always being around. Even before I could actually read, I remember having comics. One of the first ones that come to mind that I know that I was exposed to was actually A Lonely Place of Dying, and it was in a graphic novel form.
That's the Tim Drake story.
Yes. So I knew Nightwing as soon as I knew Robin.
Hmm.
And luckily my older brother, he was able to read, and I had seen these characters, the Teen Titans. This is probably maybe 1991, maybe right before the animated series came out. I was, pre-kindergarten. So I was very into superheroes because they were exposed to me, but then Batman the animated series came out, and then like I was hooked. I was full in on Batman lore. I could get wherever I could get any kind of comic, especially DC. I would. So at that time in the 90s, you could get at the grocery store, at the corner store, and this, yeah, any comic that I could get my hands on, I would. But around when I was around maybe 10 or 11 is when I stumbled onto an actual comic book store. And that happened because it was right next door to my orthodontist. And I had horrible teeth when I was younger. And I was so stubborn and fought every single time I had to go and get the rubber bands adjusted. And the only way that my parents could get me to calm down and to even just go was to go to the comic book store next door. And through doing that every month, they started to get to know my taste. And that's when Scott McDaniel and Chuck Dixon's Nightwing run came out. So I was there at the beginning, even just a little bit before when the miniseries came out. I did get that, and when the ongoing started, that's when I started to understand things about like, oh, creative teams. These come out every
Mhm.
month. There's connected stories. If you follow along, the stories will make sense. Because I was just getting random issues, and just dropping into any kind of story I could. So I started to follow along with that, and then Grant Morrison's JLA was coming around the same time. So those were kind of my actual comic fan introduction uh, titles, and then it just spiraled from there. It's still one of my favorite Superman iterations. Was I think it was the second arc was the electric blue Superman. Still
Oh
my
yeah, it's
still
just
my
so
favorite
iconic.
Superman. Yeah, I
Mm.
mean, people have their own opinions about it. I just very identify that nostalgically with my childhood of like, oh, that's when I started paying attention to Superman is when they changed him. Which goes to show you marketing works. So so
I mean, it's just an iconic design too. I get so hyped whenever I'm reading a book now, and even John like supercharges and looks kind of like it. It's really cool.
I was so happy that that's the direction that they went, and I saw Dan's design of all of the super family
Oh
characters,
yeah.
and when I saw that the John Kent with the blue electric, I was already a John Kent fan from when he was in Super Sons, and then to the aged up. Doesn't really matter to me. I think he's just a great character no matter what. And then they just had to put that electric blue in there, and that sealed the deal for me. I was like,
Definitely.
yes, absolutely. The jacket, I love the jacket design too. Um,
I love it
but yeah,
too. Yeah. Um, so building off that, other than the ones you mentioned, are there any other like particular runs or artists that you'd say you're particularly inspired from to this day in your work?
oh,
Or I know
I
that from other
mean,
interviews I've listened to, your brother's also an artist that I'd imagine he's a huge help in different ways.
yes. Yeah, my brother is also an artist. He's a traditional painter, but he does a lot of commercial art, a lot of medium. He's actually doing covers for IDW for a lot of Star Trek because he's
Oh,
very good at
cool.
likeness. So he's kind of the perfect artist for something like that. Yeah, very talented. Again, we were only 4 years apart. My parents worked a lot, so I was kind of stuck with him, whether he liked it or not. So if he was stuck with me, he was gonna make me into the best sidekick that he could.
Yeah.
So anything that he was interested in just kind of transferred over to me, and luckily the skills also kind of translated a little bit too. So he was a huge influence. Scott McDaniel is probably one of the most influential to me because it was when I actually started paying attention to the artist and understood things like style, his ink blocking. So he has a very solid black, very blocky style, and I'd never seen anything like that before. I actually have a page.
Oh, that's
Um,
so cool.
I actually have an original Nightwing page right here.
That's really cool.
Um, so that was probably the most influential to me. Um, but I also would say going forward in my career, I consider Brett Booth
Mhm.
a mentor of mine. When I first started out, he kind of, for whatever reason, the kindness of his heart, he kind of took pity on me and he took me under his wing. And when I started getting, you know, middle tier gigs. I would send him my layouts. He would give me critiques, lots of red, lots of redo this kind of stuff, but ended up really helping me in the long run. I actually have quite a few pages of his too. I have some
Oh,
of
that's
his Titan, his Nightwing, his Titans, and a Green Arrow in pencils.
oh
That piece is he hates drawing archers. So that is a very rare piece that he did for me. And Green Arrow is one of my favorite heroes. So
yeah.
there's a whole like inside joke about that too. So
That's really funny. That's interesting. He doesn't like drawing archers because I know Roy's a
oh
huge part of his Titans run too.
oh yeah, and he hated it every single time that he had to draw him.
That's hilarious. How
Because
did your
he's a Flash guy.
That makes sense. I could tell that from his work too. Yeah.
Yeah.
How did that partnership with Brett Booth start, if you mind me asking?
It was just on online. It was in the early days of Twitter. He was very active on it. And I was just stupid enough and bold enough to just keep in contact with him and just say like, "Hey, I'm interested in getting to this career," like everybody does.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it was when he started to see how committed I was after a year or two and the training, and he was like, "Oh, okay, this isn't just talk. Maybe I'll actually help this kid." And I wouldn't be where I am without him. So eternally
That's great.
grateful.
That's awesome. Transitioning a little bit then, your first official work, as far as I know, was with Mad Cave Studios on RV9, with you and Ben
Yes.
Goldsmith. How did you get
Mhm.
that opportunity, and do you have any advice for artists looking for work early in their comic careers?
Mad Cave at that time, I feel like was in a transitional period or maybe even a cocoon status, because it was still very early on. They had a few titles. I know the editor in chief was writing a lot of it. The Battle Cats was like their flagship. And they approached me. I didn't submit anything. I just happened to get an email um, saying that they had come across my stuff online. This was in probably 2006, 17, 16, 17, somewhere around there. So again, they were still growing and they were looking for new artists, and I just needed a job, and I said yes, of course. So that was a big learning curve for me because that was actually working with a somewhat established publisher, and working with a writer for the first time. I had done jobs that were just kind of like I had done something for a company who was doing an Airboy story, an IP that was kind of like up for grabs. Did the entire book, never got paid. Lesson learned. I think we all have to go through that at some point, before we start treating this like a business. We all just have to kind of go through that kind of trial. But yeah, I mean, Mad Cave was good. It was a great job. Unfortunately, I haven't done anything for them since, but I've seen them grow, and like I think they just locked down Flash Gordon as a property and Dick Tracy, so I know that they're still going strong. And yeah, it's good for them because
Mhm.
we need more comics, so everybody
Definitely.
wins.
Definitely. Building off that question, then you talked a little bit about your since it was your first time working with like a writer on one of these books. What do you feel makes a good writer artist relationship?
I think just it depends. I think it depends on where each individual is at in their career. If I'm working with a writer that is very well known and very well established, I take more of their notes and take their lead a lot more because I'm still somewhat new and I value that experience a little bit more. If we're kind of on that same career trajectory in terms of like where we're at in terms of level, it's more of a collaboration because I get asked more questions. What would you like to do? What would you like to do this? And then I feel like my personality can be inputted a little bit more. Now I'm not saying like one is better than the other because I take directions from other people very well. Sometimes that makes it very easy. for me to just say, read a script, lots of notes, lots of directions. I know exactly what they want. Boom, ready to go. Here's my layouts. Sometimes the script is a little bit more loose, or there's questions put into the script of like, well, Travis, what do you think about this? Or what would you like to see in here? What would you like to draw? So I like to see myself as a team player. So whatever my role needs to be, I'm a little bit more malleable than maybe some other artists.
Mhm.
Um, so if that answers the question.
It does, yeah. That makes a lot of sense, like adaptability. Thank you for
Mhm.
that answer too.
Sure.
What do you think the benefits are of working on a title like RV9 with an indie publisher like Mad Cave as opposed to your work at DC? Not to say again that one's better than the other, but
It was just seeing the scripts, dealing with editorial for the first time on a consistent basis, knowing how important it is to be reachable for editorial, and also to be understanding of editorial. That if I have a question or if I have a concern or something, that they're spinning 10 different plates at once, and that day they may be dealing with something that is much more important. So they may not be able to get back to me right away. And I need to know that that is okay. And it's not a reflection on me. It's not a reflection on the project or anything like that. So it was more of a learning curve of how to deal with editorial on a professional level.
now you've been doing DC work with them for a while. What are some of your
Yeah.
favorite projects you've got to work with them, whether they be stories or covers that you've gotten to do?
Well, I mean, you never forget your first. And my first was a weird story because um I grew very attached to the book that I was on, even though I only did a couple of pages. Um, and it was Red Hood Outlaw, and it was I think 2020, February of 2020, when I got my first break, and it was through Ben Abernathy gave who is the Bat Group editor who recently just left. He's doing some stuff for Skybound now.
Oh,
So
cool.
we'll always be internally grateful to Ben. He gave me my first chance. And he's such a great editor, and I already miss him terribly. Um, but he gave me a few pages of Red Hood, and I was so excited, and I don't know. I think I overly prepared, for sure, because I was doing practice sketches after practice sketches of drawing the new costume of Red Hood. It was when he had just gotten the hood and the kind of the scorpion Mortal Kombat mask.
Hmm.
So I was trying to figure all that out. Read the script, was like, oh yes, this is Red Hood. You're not drawing him at all. You're only doing Artemis because there was two different stories going on at the same time. Makes sense.
Hmm.
I had a blast doing it. Artemis was such a cool character. Got very attached to her. Had never really been a big Red Hood fan. I loved the book when Kenneth Rockford was drawing it in the New 52. I just loved the look of the character. Didn't really have much connection with it, but something happened when you get that first book where he kind of has eventually become my favorite Robin, and he's probably the most commissioned character I get.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
So it was a great opportunity. It was a great experience. Unfortunately, the timing really sucked because it was, like I said, I think February 2020,
So right before
and
COVID and
right before it. So literally the next month,
yeah.
COVID happened and everything shut down, including comics. And I didn't work again for almost 2 years at DC. It allowed me time to grow too. And it was a crossroads for me. It was kind of saying, like, well, do I give up on this? I made it. Like I did what I wanted to do. I got into, one of the big two. What do I do now? Do I keep
Mhm.
going or do I do something else? And I doubled down and I kept going, and I got a holiday special where I got to redesign Polar Boy from the Legion of Superheroes, which was a lot of fun. And then it just snowballed it from that. I just got to the next thing and the next thing. So um, Story wise or cover wise, aside from like my first job, I'm trying to think. Um, I did a cover for Batman Urban Legends, and that was the first time I'd ever drawn Batman officially. That was scary and intimidating. And I didn't realize what kind of pressure I would put on myself drawing Batman because it means, well, how is my Batman any different than anybody else's? And everybody else can do it so much better. He's been done by so many great artists. Like, what do you have to contribute? Um, and I felt more comfortable just trying to do something that I hadn't seen on a cover in a while. So I put him on a jet ski, just to have the water effects and stuff like that to just try to create something new.
Yeah.
Um, so I do remember did that. I did that cover while I was in San Diego for Comic-Con too. So that kind of sticks out to me.
Yeah.
Um, as opposed to that, I am just kind of one of those creators that really get into anything that I'm assigned to becomes the most important thing at that time. Meaning, like, it doesn't matter like what the project is. I treat it as if those characters are the center of the universe. Meaning, like when I was doing Action Comics and I did the Super Twins, I did that story. I didn't know anything about them, but I did the research for them, and I still have a huge affinity for them today. Like they just become everything you do. I feel like just becomes a part of you, or maybe not. Maybe people have professional distance from their projects, but for me, it just accumulates almost like action figures. Like I just put them in the shelves of my brain, and forever they will be there with some kind of appreciation. Um, this past year, when I got Cyborg, that was a huge opportunity for me because I hadn't done many streamlined books, and I was able to contribute to two issues in a row. And Cyborg, I'm a huge Titans fan, so getting that opportunity was huge. And you know, working with the writer was fantastic. He was great. Editorial was great. The whole experience was great. It was grueling because the artist unfortunately left unexpectedly and had to leave. So it was not the most ideal in terms of time, because I was going through almost a page, if not more, a day. And I had never really had to go that fast before,
Mhm.
in that short of time. But it was, yeah, it was an experience for sure.
I'm sure too, because I loved the Cyborg book. I especially loved your art in it. The
Thank
issues you
you.
work in, there's a lot of like action sequences with the Titans that those issues, it's almost more like a team book just focused on Cyborg than it is a Cyborg ongoing. So I'm sure that was really a lot.
It was great. It was great to read when I got that script. I was in Montreal at the time, and I was traveling, and I was reading the script as I was walking down the street, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this script is amazing! Like the Titans are in it." And then I sat down at a coffee shop and reread the script, and then thought, "Oh shit, I have to draw all this."
Yeah.
Like, and then that's when it like the two worlds of being a fan and being a professional kind of clashed, and it was just more of like, okay, how am I going to do all this in
Mhm.
this time? And I did it. And I wish I could have spent a little bit more time on some of those group shots too, but um, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I did the best that I could with the time I had. I'm pretty proud of
I think
a
it came
lot of
out
the
great.
panels.
I love the
Thank
book.
you.
Hmm.
Thank you so much. I particularly like um I think
I'm pretty sure too, while you pull that up, I'm pretty sure the trade paperback just came out for
it
here as
did. It
well.
it
Right.
absolutely did. So in the center one, I definitely like this. Of course, it doesn't come up. This splash page of in Cyborg, the last issue, I was
Mhm.
really happy with. But yeah, it was I don't know, it was a great project. I really loved it. I loved getting to do all of the Titans, and I loved focusing on Cyborg too because he's such a great character and deserves the attention that it was giving him for sure.
I definitely think so too. I'm really glad he was one of the Donna DCU characters that got a book. I wish that book was able to keep going, but still.
And at the same time, we never know.
Yeah.
It's comics can be such a weird world right now. We got the 6 issues. We would have loved to keep going, and maybe there is a future for Cyborg there, whether we're a part of it or not. It's always just up in the air. Hopefully he'll continue because he's so cool.
He is. Yeah.
Um,
So transitioning again a bit, you and Jeremy Adams have been teasing a book on Instagram that a lot of people are freaking out over. People are getting
yeah.
Teen Titans or like Young Justice vibes from that. It's okay if not. Is there
Yes.
anything you can share about this book
Um,
or the pages that you've shared?
I will say that the way that kind of came about of us releasing that was more of just me and Jeremy texting back and forth of being like, I think people will really like this. Should we show them? Yeah, let's show them. Let's see what happens. Let's see what the reaction is. And I was like, oh, okay. And the reaction exploded, and then it just became like, Jeremy, should we send more? He's like, yeah, send more to keep doing it. And it just kind of spiraled out of control. I've never seen interactions like that before on anything that I've posted or, work that I've worked on. Which was great to see because it was kind of one of those examples of the positive fandom.
Hmm.
And depending on what week it is in comics, you can sometimes it's that's not the case. Sometimes we see a lot of toxic behavior from either creators or fans or talking about things that are just they're not great.
Hmm.
So that was one of those examples where I felt like I saw the best in the comic community because everybody was so excited. Everybody was very complimentary, and you have to understand these sketches were just doodles. Like I was doing 3 or 4 of them a day. Like I wasn't really trying to make them crisp and clear. It was more of to just try to get ideas out. Um, but it is in the hands of editorial, and that's all I can say for right now. Yeah.
Well, that's great. I'm sure that's gonna still excite people. I was one of those people freaking out, and as every new character design came out, I was like, "Oh, who?" One of the people in the comments like, "Who's gonna be next?" Reading everybody's comments, so that's awesome to hear. I'm glad that the feedback was so positive because it definitely was deserved.
Absolutely. And it was great. It would just make me chuckle every time somebody actually would guess it right of who was coming next. And then there was people that were very disappointed about like, oh, these characters weren't included. And all I can say is there was a lot of people who were sad that some characters were not included, but the story that me and Jeremy have developed, let's just say there's room for everybody to
Okay.
appear. So I
Okay.
don't think anybody would be disappointed, even if they think so. Even if they're sad that a character design didn't get released or it wasn't in the promo image or anything like that that was shown. It doesn't mean that they won't show up.
I'm very excited then. I
Yeah.
can't wait to be able to hear more. Are there any other projects you're working on right now you can talk about or?
Yes. So I haven't talked about it yet. So this is where I will say it first. I just maybe a week and a half ago got an assignment very quickly where I will be helping out Dan Mora and Mark Wade for 2 issues of World's Finest.
Wow, that's awesome.
So it won't be the full issue. It's just a section of each issue where it is appropriate to have a different artist step in.
Mhm.
But it has been very exciting and it's been great. I'd never dreamed that I would be able to, get notes and have contacts with a writer like Mark Wade. Um, and it's just been fantastic.
That's amazing. So got to work on the World's Finest annual too. Is that maybe how this connection was formed?
Yes. Dennis Culver wrote the
Mhm.
Metamorpho story, which we had a blast in, which we would still love to do a mini series. We our fingers are crossed, especially with him appearing in Superman, uh, the the new uh the new movie. We are hoping still that a mini series is coming. That's what we
Mhm.
want. I'm hoping the fans want it too because we've got a lot of good ideas that we'd love to share. Um, so that did help. Editorial is very familiar with me, that team. So it did get me in terms of at least seen working with them, but I don't really know why exactly they chose me for this when there's so many fantastic artists. But if you can share the stage with somebody like Dan Mora for just a little while, like you don't say no to that.
I I
It's intimidating and rewarding at the same time.
I can't wait. World's Finest is one of my favorite books right now. I definitely think it's a deserved opportunity. I know a lot of people who really love your art and your character designs that are going to be really excited to hear this.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, it was kind of a jaw-dropping moment because we're talking about World's Finest, one of DC's consistently top-selling books every month.
Hmm.
So what an opportunity that is.
Yeah.
Um, and then I have the only thing that I can really say is I have a small project coming out that you might be excited for. Um, I can't say which book it is because the solicitations aren't out, but it is a Flash story. And I
And
will
I'm very excited, as I'm
and
sure you.
I will say that it revolves around Barry.
Okay. I cannot wait to
Yeah.
read it then. That's
Yeah.
very exciting. I also know that you have a cover coming out for Green Arrow 11. What's that?
I I
What's it like
do.
working on a character like that who I know you said before, and I know from other interviews you love Green Arrow, that
Oh,
that
I
must
do.
be a lot.
That was one that I was asking before Ben left. Like I was asking if there was anything Green Arrow, um, please send it to me. And eventually a spot did open up in the variant covers, and I jumped on it. And I got to do Connor with it too, who was like that was my Green Arrow when I started reading comics. Oliver Queen had been dead for a little while. Um, so I love Connor Hawk, and the fact that I got to do both of them
Hmm.
was awesome. Would love to do more. Isaac though is he's absolutely killing it on the interiors in that book, and of course, just any chance to get to work with Josh, um, I'll absolutely jump at.
Yeah, that's great. Are there any other books on the shelves right now that you're particularly enjoying, whether they be even older comics you're reading right now or
I just it when your world is mired in making comics, I just wish that I had more time to read it. It
yeah.
feels like the only chance that I get to actually read and catch up on comics is when I'm traveling. And that's if I don't have to be working on the plane, which is getting less and less common. But I do find when I do have that opportunity to read some comics, I tend to read my friends' comics. That those usually take priority. Um, uh I'm good friends with Sweeney, so whenever I get the opportunity to read her Harley,
Mhm.
I always read it. Our art styles are completely different, yet I love seeing her stuff. I love her use of textures and colors and stuff like that. Batman and Robin is one that I've been following when Simone DeMeo was doing the art, and now Nicola is doing it. Both of those artists are just fantastic and two individuals that I look up to immensely. So that has been a book that I've constantly been reading. Tom Taylor's Nightwing,
Mhm.
Bruno. I mean, any artist who is getting into comics, whether your style matches or is the opposite of Bruno's, just reading his stuff, you can learn so much from for visual storytelling from him. He's so clear, precise, and then at other times he has such great and wild ideas that all work. It all works. So I really recommend looking at his stuff for if anybody's interested in becoming an artist or you want to go in that direction. Bruno is somebody that you can definitely learn from. I would also say that Jorge Hermanes on Batman is one that I don't miss. He's a huge influence. He is just like Nicola too. I tend to be more of marrying that what is very cool and very new about manga and that the speed and the energy and just the kinetic feel that it has that manga can produce mixed with classic Western comics and merging those. Anybody who can do that, I pay attention to, and that's kind of where my heart lays. So, yeah, so I'll never miss a Jorge book ever.
Awesome. Yeah,
He's
he's been killing
fantastic.
it on Batman. Absolutely. On that note, is there any other, to start wrapping up the show, any advice you have to artists looking to break into the industry that, you have to offer, you wish you knew years ago?
I will bestow the best advice that was given to me. And it's not the most sunshiny advice, but it is very real, which I think is more useful. And I was told only do this job if it is the only thing that you see yourself doing. If you can see yourself doing anything else, do that because this is a really hard life. There is no retirement, there's no benefits, there's no even guaranteed consistency of your next paycheck. Um, the hours are grueling. You work weekends, sometimes holidays. It's hard on family life, it's hard on finances, all of that stuff. I would equate it to very much being like a teacher. It has to be more of a calling. You do it because you have to do it. Because if you were doing anything else, you would still be at home drawing comics when you can. So only do this job if it's what you have to do. And that's the advice that I would give.
I think that's some great advice. Thank you for that advice, and thank you for answering all these questions, for coming on the show. Where can the listeners find you?
Um, on Instagram primarily is where I post a lot. I'm trying to do better on Twitter or X or whatever it's called now. I need to be more consistent about showing work in progress. I'm terrible with social media. I'm trying to please be patient. I'm trying to get better.
Mhm. Great. Yeah, we'll put all your links in the descriptions. Make sure you go check Travis out. And like I said, Cyborg just came out, the trade paperback. Make sure you pick that up. When Travis's Green Arrow cover comes out, make sure you pick that up and be sure to follow all his updates for everything else coming out. Thank you again so much for coming on. It's been an honor having you.
Thank you so much.
Of course. See ya.